Hello, my name is James Ferrata, and I am part of the Japanese American community. My dad and his father are Japanese. One of the things that brings this community together, as my grandpa would always joke, is good food. There is some truth to that, though, as his parents were involved in the Japanese American Citizens League, and my great grandmother's recipes are sold in a cookbook that they sometimes sell. There is also a shared sense of struggle within the community. Unfortunately, there are not very many customs that have been passed down to me and my family. This is mainly due to the racism and shame that came with being Japanese during and then evidently after World War II. And because of this, many families wanted to escape that racism and shame, and the best way to do that in their eyes was to become more American, which usually didn't work, but because of this, traditions and customs were often suppressed. My custom is the Day of Remembrance in the Japanese American community, and it is important because it honors those who were affected by the signing of Executive Order 9066, which led to the forced removal and then incarceration of over 120,000 Japanese Americans during World War II. The first thing to note is that some people will make pilgrimages to the internment camps to walk through them, reconnect with others, and to honor those who were held there, and to make sure that the history is not forgotten. Now, my family doesn't really have the time or the money to do that. It is definitely something that is on my bucket list of things to do. I have been to Minidoka National Historic Site, just not on February 19th, but we have been there and donated items and walked around with my great uncles. What exactly does my family do on this day? This custom happens on February 19th, and since we usually have school or work, we usually do things later on in the day. My dad makes seafood tempura, this being one of the things that my grandpa and he had when they were little kids, and it's in the little cookbook that they sell with my grandmother's recipes. After this, we usually call and talk to my grandpa and try to learn more about Minidoka from him. He didn't really like talking about it because it's obviously stressful and brings up bad memories, but he would share some of his experiences on that day, or if we had school projects, but he just knew that it was important not to forget what happened. I'm definitely going to miss his conversations as he has unfortunately passed, but that is with life. As implied in the name, it is a day of remembrance. Because of what happened to the Japanese Americans, is not something that should be forgotten, and most certainly not repeated. I think this custom started as a way for families and communities to process what happened, as well as honoring those who were affected by it. By doing this gives them the chance to share their experiences and make sure that their stories are not lost over time. People continue to observe this day because it is the best way to prevent something like this from happening again is by talking about it and educating others. Ignorance of history can and will lead to its repetition. So this custom helps keep that awareness alive, especially for younger generations who didn't experience it themselves. One of the positive things about it is that it brings people together and helps keep the history alive and not being forgotten while encouraging conversations that might not have happened otherwise. However, as I have stated, one of the negative things is that it can be difficult for some people to revisit those painful memories, especially for the families who have experienced it directly. So, what does this custom mean? This custom represents the past and is a day set aside for people to share their experiences with others. It also represents understanding of how the displacement affected people not only at the time, but later on in their lives, so that others can see the impact of having something like that forced upon them and recognize that no one should have to go through that at all, and acknowledge the strength of those who endured it and still prevailed. In my community, this custom is also a way to remember, reflect, and make sure that those experiences of those who lived through it are respected and not ignored. As for me personally, this means learning as much about my family history and the stories that my grandpa and great uncles have told me about their time in Minidoka, or as they called it, Camp Idaho. It also means that I make sure that those stories are passed down to younger generations so that they are not forgotten, and I also find it just as important to learn as much as I possibly can about the Japanese internment, because there's always more that you can learn. The more the people understand it, the more likely this will be recognized as why it is wrong and why it should never happen again. And there is really no reason why you shouldn't be able to recognize that putting people in internment camps is wrong. And this is why the custom still matters today. And as always, thank you for your time.